I realized I was falling for a stranger the same day I noticed he ties his shoelaces the exact same way every morning at 8:12 a.m. I just didn't know it was the same person. It started stupidly. Boring Tuesday night. I was lying in bed, half scrolling through an app I downloaded and deleted at least 5 times before. You know the one. The I'm not really looking for anything serious app that somehow always turns into 3-hour conversations at 1 a.m. His profile was almost empty. No face pic. No bio except, probably closer than you think, and a blurry photo of what looked like a coffee cup on a metal table. Normally I would have skipped, but something about that line hooked me. I messaged first. Closer than I think? That sounds mildly threatening. He replied almost instantly. Or mildly interesting. Depends how brave you are. I actually laughed out loud. My name's Gideon, by the way. I'm not usually the bold one. I'm the observe from across the room type. The guy who overthinks texts and rewrites replies 3 times before hitting send. But with him, felt easy. We didn't exchange names. He said he preferred staying anonymous for now. I told him that made him sound like a secret agent. He said, maybe I just like the idea of you not knowing who I am. That should have been my first clue. We talked for hours that first night. About dumb stuff at first, coffee orders, worst first dates, whether pineapple belongs on pizza. Then it shifted. It always does. He asked what my mornings looked like. I told him I grab coffee at the same cafe near my apartment before work. Always at 8:15. Always the same drink. Let me guess, he wrote. You stand near the window while you wait. I frowned at my screen. Okay. That's specific. You seem like a window guy. I brushed it off. Lucky guess. We started talking every night after that. It became a routine. I'd get home, toss my keys on the kitchen counter, collapse onto the couch, and there'd be a message waiting. Hey, window guy. He had a dry sense of humor, a little teasing, confident but not arrogant. And he paid attention. If I mentioned I had a stressful meeting the next day, he'd ask how it went. If I said I hated when people chewed loudly, he'd send a voice note exaggeratedly crunching chips just to annoy me. I tried to get a picture out of him. Come on, at least a blurry one. Maybe I've already shown you who I am. That line again. Always something like that. Meanwhile, in real life, my days were painfully ordinary. Same commute, same cafe, same barista who misspelled my name in a new way every week. Same people passing by. And there was this one guy. I didn't know his name. Tall, dark hair that never quite stayed styled. Always wearing headphones around his neck, even when they weren't on. He'd come in around the same time as me. Order something simple. Black coffee. No sugar. We never spoke. But we noticed each other. You know how you can feel someone's eyes on you? It was like that. Some mornings, I'd glance up from my phone and he'd already be looking at me. Not in a creepy way. Just steady. One time we both reached for napkins at the same moment. Our hands brushed. Sorry, he said quickly. His voice was deeper than I expected. Calm. Controlled. All good, I replied, probably too fast. We both pulled back like the napkin dispenser had shocked us. That night, I told my mystery guy about it. Hot cafe stranger? He asked. I didn't say hot. You didn't have to. I rolled my eyes at my phone. He's just there every morning. And you've never talked? Nope. Maybe you should. Maybe he doesn't even notice me. There was a long pause. Then, he notices you. I stared at that message longer than I should have. You sound very sure. Some guys are better at watching than talking. Something about that made my chest tighten. Over the next week, the conversations got heavier. Less joking. More real. He asked if I'd ever been in love. I told him once. It didn't end well. He didn't push. Just said, that makes sense. You sound careful. Careful. Yeah. That's me. One night, I asked him the question I'd been circling around. Why won't you tell me your name? He replied, because if I tell you, it changes things. How? You'll start looking at me differently. That hit harder than I expected. I already look at you differently. I typed before I could stop myself. The 3 dots appeared. disappeared, appeared again. Gideon, he wrote. My heart actually skipped. It was the first time he'd used my name. You have no idea how close you are. I sat up straighter in bed. Close to what? To figuring it out. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I went to the cafe like usual. I felt ridiculous, like I was in some low-budget rom-com, scanning the room for clues. He was there, headphones guy, standing near the counter, black coffee in hand. And for the first time, he didn't look away when I looked at him. He held my gaze, longer than normal. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I swallowed. Slowly, I pulled it out. One new message. Blue shirt looks good on you today. My stomach dropped. I was wearing a blue shirt. I lifted my eyes from the screen. He was still looking at me. And then, just barely, he smirked. That was the moment I realized two things at once. 1. The stranger I'd been falling for every night was standing 10 feet away from me. And 2. He had known exactly who I was this entire time. I just didn't know his name yet. But I was about to. For a second, I genuinely thought I might pass out. My brain was trying to catch up to what my eyes were seeing. Headphones guy. Black coffee. The steady gaze. My phone still in my hand. The message still glowing on the screen. Blue shirt looks good on you today. I looked back up at him. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look smug either. Just calm. Like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. My heart was hammering so loud I was convinced the entire cafe could hear it. I typed back without breaking eye contact. Is this your dramatic reveal moment? His phone buzzed in his hand almost instantly. He glanced down, then back at me. A slow smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Depends. Are you disappointed? I swallowed. Hard. I typed, come here. I don't know where that confidence came from. It definitely wasn't my usual move. But this wasn't usual. He hesitated for half a second. Then he walked toward me. Every step felt louder than it probably was. My brain was hyper-aware of everything. The scrape of chairs, the hiss of the espresso machine, the way my pulse was racing under my skin. When he stopped in front of me, it felt surreal. I'd imagined this guy 100 different ways in my head. Built a voice around his texts. Assigned expressions to his words. And now he was just here. Up close, he was even better looking than I'd allowed myself to admit in the past week. Sharp jaw. Dark eyes that looked almost amused. A small scar near his eyebrow I'd never noticed from afar. He slid his phone into his pocket. So, he said. That voice. The same calm tone from the napkin incident. You're the mysterious window guy. I stared at him. You're the probably closer than you think creep. He laughed, a real one this time. Not just a smirk. Okay. That sounds worse out loud. You've been watching me. Observing, he corrected. That's not better. He leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice just enough that it felt private. You noticed me too. That shut me up. Because he was right. Every morning, I'd clocked him without meaning to. The way he stood. The way he wrapped his fingers around his cup. The way he'd glance over like he wanted to say something and then didn't. You knew it was me the whole time? I asked. Pretty much. Since when? The second night we talked. My brain short-circuited. What? You mentioned the barista spells your name wrong. I've heard her call Gideon at least 3 times. I groaned. That's humiliating. He smiled again. It helped narrow things down. So you just what? Confirmed it. You described the cafe layout. The metal tables. The crack in the window near the corner. There aren't that many options. I shook my head slowly. And you didn't think to tell me? His expression shifted slightly, softer now. I liked that you didn't know. Why? Because you were honest. That caught me off guard. I was honest anyway. Yeah, he said quietly. But you weren't performing. There was something about the way he said that. Not teasing. Not playful. Real. What's your name? I asked finally. He held my gaze for a long second. Derek. Derek. Fit him. Strong. Grounded. Not flashy. Okay. I said. Derek. He watched my reaction like it mattered. So, He added, "Are you mad?" I considered it. Part of me wanted to be. It would have been easier, cleaner. But the bigger part, the louder part, it was wired, alive. No, I admitted. Good. But I should be. Probably. We stood there in this weird charged bubble while people moved around us like normal life hadn't just tilted on its axis. "So what now?" I asked. "That depends," he said. "On what? Do you still want to get to know me?" I laughed softly. "You mean the version of you that exists outside my phone?" "Yeah, that one." I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because this felt like stepping off something stable into something unpredictable. For 2 weeks he'd been safe. A screen. Words. A mystery I could close any time by turning off my phone. Now he was real. Solid. Close enough that I could see the faint stubble along his jaw. "I was starting to like you," I admitted. His eyes flickered at that. "Starting? Don't get cocky." He stepped a little closer. Close enough that I could smell his cologne. Subtle, clean. "You said you already look at me differently," he reminded me. God, he remembered everything. "I did," I said. And this is a lot." He nodded slowly. "I know." For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he surprised me again. "I can back off," he said. "If this feels weird." The fact that he offered that he wasn't pushing did something to me. "You sat on this for 2 weeks," I said. "You don't get to back off now." His mouth twitched. "So that's a yes? That's a coffee?" He blinked. "Coffee? Yeah, like a normal person. We sit. We talk. You tell me why you thought lurking was a solid strategy." Fair. We ended up at one of the small metal tables by the window. "My spot." He noticed. "Of course you sit here. Don't start." He leaned back, studying me like he had all the time in the world. "So what gave me away?" he asked. "The message," I said. "The blue shirt thing was dramatic." He shrugged. "You were taking too long to figure it out." "I was enjoying the mystery." "Were you?" There it was again, that steady look. "Yeah," I said. "I was." And now my chest felt tight in a different way. Less mystery. More risk. Now it feels real. He didn't break eye contact. Good. And that was the moment it hit me. This wasn't some random coincidence. Derek had chosen to talk to me. Chosen to keep it going. Chosen to sit here. And the way he was looking at me right now, it wasn't casual. It wasn't just curiosity. It was intentional. I had started chatting with a stranger. But somehow, without realizing it, I'd been building something with someone who'd been standing 10 feet away from me every morning. And now he wasn't 10 feet away. He was right here. And I had no idea what I was about to get myself into. Coffee with Derek should have felt normal. Didn't. It felt like sitting across from a secret I'd already told too much to. We talked for almost an hour that morning. About surface-level things at first, work, schedules, how long we'd both lived in the neighborhood. But underneath it, there was this constant current. Because every time he said something, I had two versions of him in my head. Derek from the screen, and Derek right in front of me. And somehow they matched. "You're quieter in person," I told him. He lifted an eyebrow. "That disappoint you?" "No, just different. Texting gives you time to think," he said. "In person, I'd rather listen." "That's convenient." "For you or for me?" "For you," I shot back. "You already had a 2-week head start." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "I didn't plan it like that. It kind of looks like you did." He hesitated just enough for me to catch it. "Okay," he admitted. "Maybe I didn't hate having the advantage." I narrowed my eyes. "That's manipulative. It's cautious." That word again. Cautious. "You think I'm that fragile?" I asked. "No," he said immediately. "I think you're careful about who you let in." That landed. Because it was true. After what happened with my ex, which I told him about late one night, thinking he was just a stranger who couldn't hurt me, I had gotten selective, guarded, efficient with my emotions. Derek knew that, because I'd told him. "I didn't want you shutting down the second you saw me," he added quietly. You thought I wouldn't like what I saw? He held my gaze. I wasn't sure. There it was. The first crack in his confidence. And for some reason, that's what made my chest soften. You're not exactly hard to look at, I said before I could overthink it. He blinked. Then a slow smile spread across his face. That's the first time you've complimented me in person. Don't make it weird. Too late. I kicked his foot lightly under the table. The tension shifted after that. Less mystery. More awareness. When we both finally glanced at the time, we realized we were late. Him to work, me to a meeting I was absolutely not mentally prepared for. We stood at the same time, and suddenly we were close again. Not cafe table close. Real close. So, he said, do we go back to texting like nothing changed? No, I said. No. No more anonymous messages. No more cryptic hints. He nodded slowly. Okay. But, I added, you still have to earn it. He smirked. Earn what? I stepped past him toward the door, brushing his shoulder on purpose this time. Me. I could feel his eyes on me as I walked out, and I hated how much I liked that. The next few days were strange. Not bad, just intense. We still texted, but now it felt different. Less fantasy. More real time. Are you always this distracted at work? He wrote Tuesday afternoon. I glanced up from my desk instinctively. Across the street. Through the glass. He was standing outside the cafe. Looking right at me. I nearly choked on air. You're insane. I texted. You waved first. I hadn't even realized I had. That became our thing. Small looks. Subtle smiles. Shared space without actually sharing it. But we hadn't gone on a real date yet. Not officially. Thursday night, my phone buzzed while I was making dinner. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. don't bail. Is that a request or a command? Depends how much you like being told what to do. I stared at that message longer than I should have. Location. I replied. I'll pick you up. That made my stomach flip. I hadn't had someone pick me up for a date in a long time. Okay. I typed before I could talk myself out of it. Friday, 6:57 p.m. I was pacing. Actually pacing. This was ridiculous. I'd already talked to him for weeks. I'd had coffee with him. I'd made eye contact that lasted entirely too long. And yet this felt bigger. A real first date. Doorbell. I froze. Then I forced myself to move. When I opened the door, Derek was standing there in dark jeans and a fitted black shirt that made it unfairly obvious how broad his shoulders were. For a second, we just looked at each other. You clean up nice, he said. You're staring. I know. God, are you always this intense? I asked. Only when I mean it. My heart did that stupid skip thing again. Ready? He asked. I grabbed my jacket. Yeah. The car ride was quieter than I expected. Not awkward, just charged. His hand rested on the gear shift. Mine was on my thigh. And at one red light, his fingers brushed mine. Neither of us pulled away immediately. That felt like a decision. He took me to a small restaurant a few neighborhoods over. Dim lighting. Not loud. Intimate without being try-hard. You've been planning this? I accused as we sat down. Since day 4. Day 4. That's when I realized this wasn't just flirting. My breath caught slightly. And what is it now? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Potential. The way he said it, steady, sure, made it feel heavier than just a word. Dinner was easy. Easier than I expected. We laughed. We teased. We told stories we hadn't texted about yet. And every once in a while, the conversation would dip into something softer. At one point, he reached across the table and adjusted my sleeve absent-mindedly. His fingers lingered. The air shifted. When we stepped back outside afterward, the night air was cool. He didn't rush to the car. He just stood there with me under the streetlight. So, he said quietly. So, I echoed. I meant what I said. About potential? Yeah. My chest tightened again. You scare me a little, I admitted. Why? Because this feels fast. He stepped closer. Not touching. just close enough that I could feel the warmth coming off him. I've been watching you for longer than 2 weeks, Gideon. That hit me straight in the ribs. What? Not in a creepy way, he added quickly. Just noticing. You're hard not to. My pulse picked up. And you waited? I wasn't sure if I'd get a chance. You could have just said hi. He gave me a look. And risk you shutting me down in 5 seconds? I opened my mouth to argue. Closed it. He wasn't wrong. The street felt quieter suddenly, like we were in our own pocket of space again. I'm glad you didn't say hi, I said softly. His eyes flickered. Yeah. A beat. Then 2. Then his hand lifted slowly, giving me time to pull back if I wanted. My breath caught. You still want me to earn it? Yeah, I whispered. But you're making progress. And when he leaned in this time, it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't a mystery. It was deliberate, just like everything else about him. And when his lips finally brushed mine, it felt like something that had been building every single morning at 8:12 a.m. and was finally allowed to happen. That kiss stayed with me longer than it should have. Not in a dramatic, fireworks exploding way. It was quieter than that. Slower, like something clicking into place instead of blowing up. He didn't rush it. That was the first thing I noticed. Okay, he murmured. That felt important. I laughed under my breath. You say that about all your first kisses? No, he said immediately. Just the ones I wait for. That did something to me. The ride home after was different from the ride there. His hand found mine without hesitation this time, fingers interlacing at a red light. It felt natural, like something we'd done 100 times already. When he parked outside my building, neither of us moved to get out right away. I had a good time, I said unnecessarily. He smiled. I know. I turned to him. You know? You stop tapping your fingers when you're relaxed. I stared at him. You noticed that? Yeah. I shook my head, half smiling. You're dangerous. I've been told. He walked me to my door. Didn't push. Didn't assume. Just waited. I'm not inviting you in, I said, even though my hand was already on the knob. I know, he said calmly. That made it easier. He leaned in, kissed me again, softer this time, and stepped back. Text me when you're inside, he said. Bossy. Cautious, he corrected. I watched him walk away before I went in. That night, lying in bed, phone glowing in the dark, I realized something unsettling. I trusted him. Not completely, not blindly, but enough that it scared me. Over the next couple of weeks, Derek and I slid into something that felt like a rhythm. Morning glances at the cafe turned into shared tables. Black coffee for him, my usual for me. Sometimes he'd steal a sip just to annoy me. You like it, he'd say. I tolerate it. Liar. Evenings were split between texts, walks, and low-key dinners. Nothing flashy, nothing rushed, but there was intention in everything he did. One night, as we walked through the neighborhood, I asked him the question that had been sitting in my chest. Why me? He didn't answer right away. We stopped at a crosswalk. He looked at me instead of the light. You really want to know? Yeah. You don't try to impress people, he said. You don't oversell yourself. You listen. And when you like someone, you let it show in quiet ways. I swallowed. That's not exactly a bold pitch. It is to me. Another pause. I've dated loud, he added. I wanted calm. I laughed softly. I don't feel calm. You are, he said. You just don't realize it. A few days later, I stayed over at his place for the first time. Nothing dramatic happened. No rushing. No expectations. We cooked pasta, burned the garlic, ended up eating on the couch in mismatched bowls. At one point, my head ended up against his shoulder. He didn't move, didn't tense, just adjusted slightly so I was more comfortable. That felt bigger than any big gesture. Later, lying next to him, his arm draped loosely over me, I listened to his breathing slow as he fell asleep. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. It hit me one morning at the cafe. We were standing in line, His shoulder pressed lightly against mine, and I thought back to that first night. The anonymous messages, the mystery, the distance. I looked up at him. "What?" he asked. "I almost missed this," I said. He frowned slightly. "How?" "If you just said hi that first day," I admitted, "I probably would have smiled politely and moved on." He nodded. "I know. And if I'd figured it out sooner," I added, "I might have panicked. Probably. But instead," I said quietly, "we got to know each other without the noise." He reached for my hand under the counter. Exactly. That was the moment it clicked. I hadn't just fallen for a stranger online. I'd fallen for someone who had been there all along, watching, waiting, choosing me carefully. And now, standing beside me in line at 8:12 a.m., Derek squeezed my hand and leaned in. "Blue shirt again tomorrow?" he murmured. I smiled. "Only if you keep noticing." And he did. About a month in, something shifted. Not in a bad way, just deeper. Up until then, everything had felt intentional but light. Coffee, kisses outside my building, nights on his couch where we fell asleep halfway through a movie. But there's a point in something new where it stops being exciting and starts being real. And real is scarier. It happened on a random Wednesday. I'd had a brutal day at work. Everything went wrong. A client backed out. My inbox was a disaster. By the time I got to the cafe the next morning, I was already irritated. Derek was there first. He looked up when I walked in and immediately knew something was off. I didn't have to say anything. He didn't ask, "What's wrong?" in that loud, public way some people do. He just shifted slightly, creating space at the table. I sat. He slid my coffee toward me without comment. "You're quiet," he said gently. "Tired," I muttered. He studied me for a second, then nodded. We didn't talk much that morning. And for some reason, that meant more than if he tried to fix it. Later that night, I went to his place. I didn't text ahead. I just showed up. He opened the door looking confused and then concerned. "You okay?" I shrugged. "Can I just sit here?" His expression softened instantly. "Yeah, of course." We ended up on his couch. No music, no TV. I told him about the client, about feeling like I was always one mistake away from everything collapsing, about how exhausting it was pretending I had it together all the time. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer advice, just listened. And when I finally ran out of words, he pulled me into him. Not dramatically, just firm, steady. "You don't have to perform with me," he said quietly against my hair. That sentence hit harder than I expected, because that's exactly what I do. At work, with friends, on dates before him. Even with him at the beginning, I curated myself. The cool version, the low-maintenance one. But right then, in his arms, I felt unfiltered and safe. The real test came a week later. Saturday morning, cafe. Except this time, it wasn't just us. Two of my coworkers walked in right as Derek reached across the table to steal a sip of my coffee. "Gideon?" I froze. Derek's hand paused midair. My coworkers stared between us. And in that split second, I felt it. That old instinct to pull away, to create distance, to downplay. But Derek didn't move. He didn't drop my hand. He didn't step back. He just waited, not pushing, not forcing, waiting for me. "This is Derek," I said. Clear, simple. My coworker's eyebrows shot up. Oh, there it was. That moment. The moment where you either shrink or you don't. "He's the guy I've been seeing," I added, and I felt Derek's fingers squeeze mine under the table. Not possessive, not claiming, just supportive. The conversation was awkward for about 30 seconds. Then it normalized. And when my coworkers left, I exhaled. Derek studied me carefully. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said honestly, because I was. He nodded once. And then, very casually, he leaned over and kissed me. Right there, in the cafe. Not exaggerated. Not dramatic. Just real. And for the first time, I didn't feel like something fragile. "Do you ever regret not just saying hi that first morning?" He smiled faintly in the dark. "No. Why? Because if I'd just said hi, you would have kept me at arm's length. He was right. And this way? I asked. This way, he said softly. You let me in before you even knew it. I turned toward him. You planned that. Not exactly. Derek. He chuckled quietly. I just wanted a real shot. I rested my hand over his heart. You got it. And as he pulled me closer, I realized something that surprised even me. I didn't just fall for a stranger who turned out to be closer than I thought. I fell for someone who saw me every day and chose to stay, not because it was convenient, and that felt bigger than the mystery ever did. For a while, everything felt steady. Not perfect, not fantasy-level effortless, just solid. We still had our mornings at 8:12, still had our quiet jokes, still had that small spark every time our eyes met across a room, even if we just woken up next to each other. But the longer something feels good, the more you start waiting for it to shift. At least I do. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. We were at his place, rain tapping against the windows. I was half asleep on his couch, my head in his lap while he scrolled through something on his phone. I wasn't really paying attention until I heard it. A laugh. Not the soft one he gives me, the louder one. I tilted my head slightly. On his screen, I caught a glimpse of a message thread. A name I didn't recognize. A string of inside jokes. A selfie sent back and forth. A tightness crept into my chest before I could stop it. Who's that? I asked, trying to sound casual. He glanced down at me. Who are you laughing with? He looked at his phone again. Oh, that's Mark. Mark. Yeah, we used to work together. Used to. Something about the way he said it felt loaded. I sat up slowly. You still talk a lot? Sometimes. Like, sometimes? Or daily sometimes? He studied me for a second. Gideon. What? You're spiraling. I hated that he was right. I'm not spiraling, I said, already defensive. I'm asking. And I'm answering. Silence stretched between us. Rain kept tapping at the window like it was keeping time. He's someone I dated, Derek said calmly. There it was. The word. Dated. I felt my stomach drop, even though I'd known that was the direction this was heading. For how long? I asked. A few months. Last year. And you still text? Yes. I stood up. Not dramatically. Just needed space. He didn't grab me. Didn't rush to explain. He just watched. Is that a problem? He asked carefully. I ran a hand through my hair. I don't know. That's honest. I don't want to be weird about this, I said. But I also don't want to pretend it doesn't bother me. He nodded slowly. That's fair. What do you guys talk about? Work, life, dumb stuff, and feelings? No. You sure? Yes. I searched his face for any hesitation. There wasn't any. But insecurity doesn't care about logic. You never mentioned him, I said quietly. You never asked. That stung more than it should have. You tell me everything else. Not everything. That hung in the air. Why not? I asked. He leaned back against the couch. Because some things don't matter anymore. Clearly they do if you're still texting. His jaw tightened slightly. He mattered. Past tense. The rain felt louder suddenly. I don't want to compete with someone who already knows you, I admitted. You're not. You say that. Because it's true. I crossed my arms, hating how exposed I felt. This is what I was scared of, I said. What? That this would start to feel like something I could lose. His expression shifted. Softer. Gideon, I didn't worry about this when you were just some anonymous guy on my phone, I continued. But now I actually care. He stood up slowly, closed the distance between us. You think I don't? He asked quietly. I don't know. That was the truth. He exhaled, frustrated but controlled. Mark and I didn't work because we weren't aligned, he said. He wanted something casual. I didn't. I blinked. You didn't. No, that wasn't what I expected. I'm not texting him because I'm unsure about you, he continued. I'm texting him because we ended on good terms and he's part of my life in a small way. A small way. Yes. And I'm what? He didn't hesitate. You're the person I wait for at 8:12. My throat tightened. You're the one I planned a date for on day 4. You're the one I didn't want to lose by saying hi too soon. His voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. You're not competing with my past, he added. You're building something in my present. Silence. Heavy. Honest. I don't want to be the jealous guy, I admitted. You're not. I felt it, though. Yeah, he said gently. Because you care. I let out a slow breath. I hate that feeling. I know. He reached for my hand. This time I let him. If it helps, he said, I can set clearer boundaries. I looked up at him. I don't want to control you. You're not controlling me. You're telling me what makes you uncomfortable. That was new for me. Usually I'd swallow it. Pretend it didn't matter. But this mattered. I don't want secrets, I said. Then we don't do secrets. And I don't want to find out later that I missed something. You won't. He held my gaze. And for the first time since this started, it didn't feel like a romantic moment. Felt like a choice. A real one. Okay, I said finally. Okay. Okay. He pulled me into him then. Not to distract. Not to smooth it over. Just to anchor it. And as I rested my forehead against his chest, I realized something uncomfortable but important. The mystery had been easy. The flirting had been fun. But this messy, honest, slightly jealous, slightly scared version of us, this was real. And real meant we were both risking something. Not just me. Not just him. Both. And for the first time, that didn't make me want to pull away. It made me want to stay. After that conversation about Mark, things didn't magically become perfect. But they became clearer. There's a difference. We didn't avoid the topic. We didn't pretend jealousy wasn't a thing. We just handled it, like adults, which honestly was new territory for me. A few days later, Derek handed me his phone without ceremony. What? I asked. Look. It was the thread with Mark. The last message was simple. Hey man, I'm seeing someone seriously now. Might be a little less available. Just wanted to be upfront. Mark's reply was supportive, mature, uneventful. No drama, no hidden tension. Derek locked his phone and set it aside. I don't want gray areas, he said. I stared at him. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. That mattered more than the message itself. I stepped closer. You really hate half measures, don't you? Yeah, he said. With you especially. And something about that settled the last bit of noise in my head. It was strange how something that started anonymously now felt so intentional. One night, we were back at the cafe after closing hours. The owner knew Derek from years ago and let us sit inside while he cleaned up. The lights were dimmer. The place quieter than I'd ever seen it. This is weird, I said, leaning back in my chair. What? Thinking about how this all started. He smirked faintly. You mean when you thought I was mildly threatening? You were. I was strategic. Lurking is not strategy. It worked. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't help smiling. You know what's wild? I said. What? If you hadn't sent that blue shirt message, I might still be trying to figure it out. He studied me for a second. I almost didn't send it. My eyebrows lifted. You? Yeah. Why? Because once you knew, it stopped being safe. That hit. For you? I asked. For both of us. He wasn't wrong. Before that moment, we could pretend it was just playful. Just words. But once it became real, there was something to lose. You scared? I asked quietly. He didn't look away. Yeah. That honesty still surprised me. Of what? Of wanting something that might not want me back. My chest tightened. Derek. I know, he said. You've been clear. But feelings aren't logical. I stood up from my chair and walked around the table until I was in front of him. You really think I'd be here if I wasn't in this? He looked up at me, eyes steady. I don't know what "in this" means yet, he admitted. That was fair. Neither did I. I leaned down slightly so we were eye level. It means I wake up and check if you texted, I said. It means I look for you at 8:12 even when I know you'll be there. It means when something good happens, you're the first person I want to tell. His jaw tightened subtly. That's not casual, he said. No, I agreed. It's not. A beat passed between us. Then he stood up. So what is it? He asked. I exhaled slowly. It's not a mystery anymore. Good. It's not just potential. His eyes flickered slightly. Then say it. There it was. The moment. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just real. I'm not seeing anyone else, I said first. Neither am I. I don't want to. Me either. Silence. You're my boyfriend, I said finally. The word felt heavier than I expected. But right. He didn't grin. Didn't celebrate. He just looked relieved. Okay, he said softly. You're mine too. Mine. That could have felt possessive. Instead, it felt grounding. I caught myself smiling at something stupid on my phone. A memory notification popped up. A screenshot. The first message he ever sent me. Or mildly interesting. Depends how brave you are. I laughed under my breath. Derek looked over from the kitchen. What? Nothing, I said, walking toward him. I wrapped my arms around his waist from behind, resting my chin on his shoulder. You were right, I murmured. About being closer than I thought. He turned slightly in my arms. And I'm glad I was brave. He smiled. That same small, steady smile from the first morning I realized it was him. Me too. And the thing is, the mystery was fun. The reveal was electric. But the best part was realizing that the stranger I'd started falling for every night had been real all along. Not an idea. Not a fantasy. Just Derek. The guy who ties his shoelaces at 8:12 a.m. The guy who waited instead of rushing. The guy who chose me in daylight, not just in messages. And somehow, without even realizing when it happened, I chose him right back. You'd think that would be the end of it. We figured it out. We defined it. We said the word boyfriend out loud without choking on it. But here's the thing about relationships that start with mystery. Once the mystery is gone, you have to build something that can survive without it. And that's where it really began. It was a random Tuesday morning when I noticed something small but important. I walked into the cafe at 8:12. Derek wasn't there. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe traffic. Maybe work. 8:14. Still no Derek. I felt something unfamiliar creep into my chest. Not jealousy. Not fear. Just absence. The barista handed me my drink and said, "Your friend isn't here yet?" Friend. I smiled automatically. He'll be here. I wasn't sure why I said it so confidently. But I knew. At 8:17, the door opened. There he was, slightly out of breath. Hair messier than usual. Tie loosened. He scanned the room, and the second his eyes landed on me, his whole face changed. Relief. That's what it was. He walked straight over. Sorry, he said, setting his coffee down. Meeting ran late. It's been 5 minutes, I said. Felt longer. I studied him. You ran here? Yeah. Why? He looked at me like that was the most obvious question in the world. Because I didn't want you thinking I wasn't coming. That did something to me. Not dramatic. Not overwhelming. Just solid. For all the mystery, all the strategy, all the slow build, this was the clearest part. He showed up. Not just in texts. Not just in glances. In real, ordinary moments. A few nights later, we were back at my place. Windows open. City noise drifting in. We were lying on my bed, not talking, just existing in that quiet way that only happens when you're comfortable. I traced a lazy line down his arm with my finger. Do you ever think about how weird this is? I asked. Weird how? That we were in the same room for months, seeing each other, not knowing. He smiled faintly. I knew. You know what I mean. He shifted so he was facing me fully. I think about it, he admitted. How close I was to just saying hi. Would have saved us a lot of drama. Would have changed everything. How? you wouldn't have opened up the same way. He was right. Talking to a stranger let me be braver, less guarded. You tricked me into honesty, I said. He smirked. I created a safe environment. That's manipulative. That's romantic. I laughed and nudged him with my knee. Then I got quiet. You know what I realized? I said. What? I wasn't falling for the mystery. His expression softened. I was falling for the way you listened. He didn't respond right away, so I kept going. The way you noticed things. The way you waited instead of pushing. The way you handled it when I got insecure. My throat tightened slightly. That's not mystery, I said. That's you. You know what I realized? He asked. What? That I didn't want to be a stranger to you. That landed deeper than anything else. Because that's the risk, right? You can flirt with a stranger. You can fantasize about a stranger. But letting someone actually know you? That's different. You're not, I said quietly. Good. A month later, we ran into someone I used to date. Completely by accident. Grocery store. Frozen aisle. He spotted me first. Gideon. I stiffened automatically. Old habits. Old energy. But Derek's hand slid into mine before I could even think about pulling away. Not claiming. Just present. I introduced them. It was polite. Brief. Uneventful. But when we walked away, I realized something. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. I didn't feel like I was pretending. Because this time I wasn't hiding who I was with. I wasn't hiding who I was. Back in the car, I looked over at Derek. You didn't hesitate, I said. About taking my hand. He shrugged lightly. Why would I? I smiled to myself. Because once upon a time I would have. Once upon a time I was careful in a different way. But now I was careful with my feelings. Not with my visibility. It's funny. If you'd asked me before all this what kind of love story I'd end up in, I probably would have said something dramatic. Big confession. Grand gesture. Something cinematic. Instead, it started with a line on a dating app. Probably closer than you think. And it turned into mornings at 8:12. Blue shirts. Shared tables. Hard conversations about jealousy. Soft conversations about fear. And one very intentional man named Derek who chose to wait instead of rush. The mystery was what caught my attention. But the consistency is what made me stay. Now, sometimes when I catch him tying his shoelaces in the morning, same method, same focus, I smile. Because I remember when he was just the guy across the cafe. The stranger. And I think about how close we were the whole time. Not just physically, but emotionally. We were already looking at each other. We just hadn't stepped forward yet. And if I've learned anything from all of this, it's this. Sometimes love doesn't crash into your life. Sometimes it's standing 10 feet away, holding black coffee, waiting for you to notice. And sometimes, you just have to be brave enough to look back.